Hey guys, what's going on? Just kind of had like a philosophical breakthrough, and I just wanted to share it. Um, maybe it sounds corny to say, but it's some pretty cool stuff. I feel like I figured out kind of thing. If you check out the Lost Gospel of Philip and you just read through it, there's some serious knowledge in there, and it's really cool. It's amazing, like the information in there, like that wasn't included. I think it wasn't included because it's such intense information all at once. It's pretty wild. So, anyways, let's get down to business. I want to start with the idea of Adam and Eve and actually like unclean meats and like what is ritually clean and unclean. Now, in a lot of ways, like the tree of knowledge is like us determining what is clean to eat. Like, for example, God says, "Do not eat from this tree," right? And we eat from the tree. We eat food that we're not supposed to eat, and basically, darkness is like on the world. Sin is released in the world, right? But like what is ritually clean and unclean, God determines for us. For example, through the Torah, through the law, God, so I'm a Christian, but now I'm starting to think that it's actually, you're supposed to keep what is ritually clean and what is ritually unclean to eat, but you're not supposed to basically not allow you're supposed to allow people into the church whether they follow it or not. And that's where it comes in the Acts of the Apostles, with Apostle Peter and the Apostle Paul. Now, if you'll notice, Paul and Peter actually remained ritually clean with what they eat, because when Peter had his vision, you'll notice the text. It specifically says, Peter was fasting and he said, "Lord, I have not eaten anything that is common or unclean." And then Lord says, "Whatever I have cleaned, do not call common," which common means like tasteless. So when you really look at this philosophy, basically like us saying we can eat pork, and when God has said pork is unclean to eat, but we say as Christians we can eat pork and it is clean to eat. It is like us biting into the tree of knowledge, God telling us not to eat this, and we say for ourselves what is good and evil and what we can eat, because it's impure meat. So when you're taking that as impure, it makes you impure. Now, this doesn't mean that but Jesus also said, nothing that enters the mouth into the belly can defile a man, because it's casted into the drought, but it's all that leads up from the heart and out of the mouth that defiles us. So Jesus also said that these things do not defile us. What defiles us isn't the food that enters your mouth, but the words that exit your mouth. So basically it's unimportant, okay? And in the eyes of God, it's unimportant. Although if you wish to remain ritually clean, you can. So you do not have to do those things, which Paul itself, who said we may speak to people that aren't ritually clean, and they don't have to be ritually clean to be a part of the church, because that is, the mercifulness of Christ and things like that. It's about accepting basically everyone into the belief in Christ and of the Lord, So, it's all really interesting in that sense. In that sense, it's all extremely interesting. And getting into, you got to go to the Lost Gospel of Philip. It is mind-blowing. It's interesting amount of information in there. And also, when we die, it also says in the Colossians or, in other chapters that, the blood and the flesh isn't worth the kingdom, isn't allowed into the kingdom of heaven. So, in the sense that, in the next world, your body is not made of flesh and blood. It's recreated in new matter. All matter stays in this realm, but new matter is created for your soul. And it says that the soul is better than the garment in this life, but the garment in the next life is better than the soul, because it is that our flesh is imperishable, and that there is death and pain, and you feel pain in the flesh and the blood, right? So you leave the flesh and the blood for a new type of matter, right? That your soul takes on, okay? A new type of matter. And basically it's not that it's not the same complexion, but it's a different matter. So we won't be made, in the next world, we won't be made of flesh and blood, because flesh and blood is perishable, where in the next realm, what we have is imperishable. So it will not, it cannot feel pain, it cannot feel death, it cannot feel anything that is mortal in a way. So we're getting a new garment, like a new body. And also it's like Jesus also said, like, our God is not the God, our God is the God of the living, and not the God of the dead. And like, so it's just what it's saying is like, basically your soul is taken from the flesh and blood and placed into a new immortal garment, which you can just imagine some sort of like, I don't know. It doesn't mean we won't appear as humans, but it will be not in flesh and blood. And you have to be willing to leave your flesh and blood behind in order to get accepted into heaven. It's pretty dope. It's pretty cool. I mean, you gotta go through this gospel. It is so fascinating. I 100% believe it came from like Philip himself. Like, and it's under like a Geognostic website where you can read on, but nothing about it is Geognostic. That's why like so much Geognosticism tries to like claim these like lost texts, but like it's not Geognosticism in my eyes. Like, Geognosticism is like Buddhism and Hinduism, and it's not really linked to this at all, because God's not even mentioned in Buddhism and Hinduism. Like, even in the Lost Gospel of Philip, there's tons of references to God and things like that. I mean, so it's pretty fascinating. Definitely got to dive into it. Find a lot more information. There's a lot more information on like marriage too, and like relationships and things like that. It's pretty fascinating. But I just wanted to get into the main stuff. But it's pretty dope. I mean, like when you look at like what's ritually clean and unclean, like it is actually real. Like Christians aren't even supposed to eat pork, and Christians aren't even supposed to eat seafood. I think there's some exceptions. Like I like prosciutto, and that's made with kosher salt. So that's like kind of taking what's pure and purifying it with the kosher salt. So I agree with cured pork. You know what I'm saying? But it's pretty interesting, like when you look at it that way. Like the idea of the tree of knowledge being like what we can and what we can't eat. So crazy stuff. Peace.